All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Good morning, good afternoon. It is Fabulous Friday on the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Mo Kelly, filling in one more day for Mark Thompson. I got to say before we get going, it has been a wonderful experience. I am humbled and appreciative. I want to thank Albert and Tony and Kim and Mark for offering this space for me to stretch my legs and be able to talk to you and listen to you and learn from you. I believe that it is a dialogue, not a monologue, even though my voice is the one that's prominently featured. I appreciate listening and learning from you each step of the way. And we got one more day. We're going to have some fun. We're going to laugh about some things. Of course, we're going to talk about the Trump administration and its latest acts of deflection to get you to not talk about those Jeffrey Epstein emails and all these other investigations that the White House has called for. We're definitely going to talk about that. And let me just say first, good morning to Richard Delamater. He says, thanks, Mo. You were remarkable this week. Hashtag Mo in the know. Well, thank you for that. I don't know if I was remarkable, nice play on words, but I do enjoy the opportunity to opine long form about these issues which affect you and me and everyone in our families. And it's not often you get a space like this to be able to do it. I mean, working in conventional radio, you get 7 minutes and then you go to commercial and then you got to start all over again. But to do this for a good 2 hours or so, it is a wonderful, wonderful platform and format. Again, hats off to Mark and also Kim and Albert and Tony, who's with us at the beginning of the week. They make this magic every single day. Thank you. SJ Lola says, you've done a capital job, Mo. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I got to be very honest. I was kind of nervous the first couple of days. And I'm always nervous in the sense of a new format, a new platform, a new show, a new audience. And it's always different. And it takes a little bit of time to acclimate myself. And now that I feel a little bit more acclimated, it's over.
I know, but what a pleasure it's been having you this week. You're awesome.
Well, I thank you for that. And Kim, you know how I work and we had to get a rhythm with each other as far as how we process information, how it comes out on this show. And you've made this so very, very simple. When I say simple, in other words, it was an easy transition and I can't thank you enough for that.
Excellent. At least I did one thing right this week. We like it. Penny says Mo needs to be a regular feature on the Mark Thompson Show, and it turns out that he is every Friday. He sits with Michael Shure for This Week in Politics. Yeah. And so we will be seeing him on Fridays, even if we're not going to get him every day, right?
Yeah, and speaking of Michael Shure, he will be joining us as always on this Friday. We're going to come up with him in the top of the second hour. Michael Snyder, he's going to come in and leave on a rainbow at the bottom, near the bottom of the second hour to help close out the show. So it is a true Mark Thompson show. We have a Friday Fabulous Florida as well. So all the things that you're accustomed to on a Friday, we have for you on this particular Friday. So let's get into some of this. And I've been thinking about this for the past couple of days. Everyone has been talking about the Jeffrey Epstein emails, dissecting what each one may mean, what each email may implicate or who it may implicate, the type of response and the over-analysis to the point of exhaustion about what does Trump know, did Trump do? Is there any type of incriminating information? What is he willing to do to stop the flow of the Jeffrey Epstein emails? And I think we should just draw back for a second. And as the cliche goes, let's look at this from 30,000 feet. Donald Trump is a relatively simple individual when you talk about his psychology. It's not that he's afraid of going to prison. It's not that. Because he knows he has presidential immunity. He knows that he has a Republican Congress, which will do anything for him. He has a SCOTUS, which is going to protect him. So it's not a fear, even going back to prior to the SCOTUS ruling as far as presidential immunity. his motivation has never really been connected to the fear of going to prison. That's not it. The fear is in the likelihood, or the possibility at least, that we may see him for who he is. What I mean by that is starting each day with the makeup that he himself puts on his face to present this facade of someone who's healthy, who's virile, whose skin is just vibrant, when none of that is true. The way he combs his hair into this coif of a rat nest, a bird nest, or something to have you believe, even though we all know better, that he has almost no hair on top of his head. It's about protecting this persona, this image of someone who's healthy and virile. The lies about being 6'3" and 220 pounds. And to be fair, we all get shorter as we get older because of impacted spines, compacted vertebra. You ever look at your grandparents as they get older, they get shorter. My father, before he passed, he was 5'6". He was 5'11" most of his life, but that happens to all of us. So I don't begrudge him, as in Donald Trump, from holding on to the idea that he's still 6'3". I more begrudge him because he actually believes all that he puts out there as far as his physical presentation. He will continue to lie about his weight. He will continue to lie about his health. He will continue to lie about all the smallest things. He will continue to move with this fabrication of his hair because he doesn't want us to see him for who he truly is. And I believe that his legacy, his greatest fear, is his legacy will be the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, that he will be forever linked to Jeffrey Epstein, regardless of him being a two-term president, non-consecutive terms, but still a two-term president, regardless of being a billionaire, or maybe even a billionaire 10 times over, or whatever his actual worth is, something else he's lied about in previous years. He does not want to be seen in a way which connotes weakness. And we all know the bravado, the bluster is absolutely an overcompensation for his ultimate weakness. But MAGA, by and large, buys into the persona, the belief that he is a strong man, that he's a healthy and virile man with hair, and he has locks flowing, and you see all the outrageous AI depicting him as some sort of superhero.
Yeah.
Trump wants that persona. Trump desperately needs that, and he will protect it at all costs. And when I saw this story about Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and he was talking something very similar to this fear that Pritzker has about Trump's fear of being exposed in any number of ways, and how desperate Trump is at this moment and what that may mean. And we've seen him desperate, but never this desperate. He is calling out Republican Congress people. I saw a story in TMZ today where a Truth Social post where Trump was saying, paraphrasing, that if you are asking for the Epstein files, you're foolish, you're weak. And we know that's projection, because we know this president is both foolish and weak. And he is scared. He is scared. So what does a bully do? He threatens people. He wants to call for investigations of other people. He wants to distract. He wants to deflect. Did you see that President Trump is calling for an investigation into the Epstein files and Bill Clinton? How does he with a straight face do that? How does he say on one hand, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, if I've forgotten something, please add it in. He said on one hand it was a Democrat hoax. Well, if it's a hoax, what is there to investigate? And you do know that if you call for an investigation of Bill Clinton, what happens if he were to actually testify? Not that he would. But what would happen if he were to actually testify? And if you say that Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein were friends for years, we all remember that you were friends with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton for many years. So what stories could Bill Clinton tell about Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump? Wouldn't it be I would say ironic if Bill Clinton were to come forward and in his testimony implicate Donald Trump.
Say, yeah, I saw him on the plane. Sure, he was
right.
there.
Yeah, I was on the plane. Trump was on the plane. Everybody was on the plane.
It's this kind of response that a mom knows about, where you know the kid that broke the vase, but the other kid stands there pointing the finger. No, Joey did it. Wasn't me, right? Look at Joey. Joey's the one. I mean, you can't call for an investigation of President Clinton because his name was, somewhere, or Larry Summers, his name was in the emails, or all these other political figures that were mentioned in the dump of Epstein emails this week, and not and leave yourself out of the mix. It's just so silly.
A reasonable person, and we're not talking about reasonable people, but a reasonable person knows that you cannot implicate someone else in something that you've already been implicated in. You are not an impartial outsider and observer. Anything that's in the Epstein files is at least connected to, on some level, to Donald Trump. They had interaction. He is mentioned by name. He is discussed by name in the emails. He is part of any investigation. If he were a lawyer, he would have to recuse himself. If he were a judge presiding, he would have to recuse himself. If this were a criminal case, he would likely be called up to testify. If this were in a court of law, we all know that it's not going to get there, but he's very much part of it. And to that end, going back to J.B. Pritzker, one of the fears of someone being exposed in a way that Donald Trump is afraid of being exposed is possibly going the cinematic route of wag the dog and starting a war to get people to not talk about this in the media or amongst ourselves. Where could we end up in a war? Well, Venezuela is definitely a good candidate. Oh, and by the way, Kim, did you see we blew up another boat with another 4 people in it? So the timing cannot be ignored. The timing is specific and intentional. The timing of this newly announced investigation into Congressman Eric Swalwell and mortgages cannot be ignored. All of these things are happening simultaneously and not in a vacuum, but to give media outlets something else to discuss or to cloud what we call the talker. The talker is the main story that everyone is talking about. And if you can cloud media with these other stories, which on the surface suggest that they are newsworthy and notable, then you somehow blunt the impact of the Jeffrey Epstein discussion and somehow distract news media from focusing on the Jeffrey Epstein discussion. And maybe you get Congress, or especially the Republican conference, back in line and not vote for that discharge petition next week. It's not going to work, but you understand the motivation. And the motivation is this president, although materially immune to what may come out of the Epstein investigation, he is most definitely, I've never seen him this, what I would call, afraid of what could come out. And to me, the fear is based on the fact that he knows better than anybody what might be in there, from pictures to video to emails. And here's something else I wish people would better understand and better argue on social media as far as destroying the narrative against the Epstein files. What is coming, you're seeing all the bots and also the Republican right-wing talking heads echoing the same thing. Well, the Democrats had access to this information for 4 years. Why didn't they do anything about it? Number one, no, they didn't. Most of it was under seal because of the ongoing Ghislaine Maxwell investigation. That's number one. Number two, what is coming out right now is not from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, be it in New York or Florida. This is coming from subpoenaed information from the Epstein estate, meaning everyone had access to that. Todd Blanche, the deputy attorney general, had access to the information if he were to subpoena it. The Democrats decided, well, let's just issue a subpoena. They got it. Now they're releasing it. So don't think that because these emails from the estate are coming out that we're actually getting the Jeffrey Epstein files. No, it's two different things. Some of these emails may be in the official Jeffrey Epstein files, but they're not from the files that the government has. And I think that's part of the reason why the White House is on its heels and they're scared ishless, if only because they have some knowledge of what is contained in some of the emails, or they have full knowledge of what the estate has, and there's nothing they can do to prevent the estate from giving it over to either the Democrats and or news sources. In other words, there are going to be so many holes in this dam, there will not be enough fingers to plug all the holes.
I wonder if there's a list somewhere that Trump has of when, as you say, the ish hits the fan and he's flailing about trying to figure out how to deflect. If there's a list of things, he may go down and go, well, they really didn't like it when I renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. What else can I rename? Or they really freaked out when I tore down the East Wing. What else can I do? What else can I dismantle in the White House that'll become the top news story? Boy, they really don't like this Venezuela thing. What else can I blow up? And that's the scary part is, the damage that he could do as he flails about pointing the finger everywhere else. It's a little scary.
Did you see the story, to your point, Kim? Did you see the story, or I should say the picture, the video of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth supposedly screwing in the sign, the Department of War on the Pentagon with a Phillips screwdriver? A Phillips screwdriver. Albert, if you should have a chance to find that, it's hilarious because no one hangs an actual sign or mounts a sign with a Phillips screwdriver. So it was all, going back to what I said yesterday, performance politics, but again, trying to distract away from what everyone is talking about, including on the right side of the aisle. Now, they may be talking about it differently. They may be trying to excuse it. Here we go. See, don't tell me that they use a screwdriver to mount that, what I think is a brass plaque.
I don't know how you
marble?
hang one of those up, but I don't know, that doesn't seem right, Mo.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I've hung a few things in my day on drywall, maybe, but not like marble or a column. And you're definitely not going to be able to do it with a Phillips head screwdriver. I mean, that goes back to insulting our intelligence.
Never been anything like this.
I'm surprised they didn't give him a big manly drill.
You would think. You would think. And that would have been more believable. That would have been more believable. And it would have been more believable if someone else had hung the sign. The Secretary of Defense / War is not going to be the person hanging the sign. But that goes back to the 35% of everyone just being idiots, because there are those who will believe it, not question it, not find it odd, not see anything out of place, not question the timing of it. Ole Hansen says he's not allowed to use electric tools.
Penny says it's a perfect use of his time. At least, well, if he's doing a photo op to screw in the sign, he can't screw up anything else.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's mutually exclusive. Just because he's out in front of the building at 9 a.m. doesn't mean that he's not screwing up something inside the building at the same time. Yeah. This, though, going back to the original point, highlights what I believe is the most fearful time in this presidential term. And when I say fearful for the White House and fearful for us as far as how the White House may respond. And you can use all the cliches and analogies about when an animal's been backed into a corner and how desperate they are. This is a desperate White House in a way that I haven't seen. The fear is palpable. It doesn't mean that Donald Trump is going to be removed from office. And I want people to be clear. And if you're watching our stream right now and not just listening, you can see the actual video of Pete Hegseth supposedly screwing in the Department of War sign, which doesn't change anything. It's more theatrics. And it's bad theatrics because he has his sleeve rolled up and he's putting to use a Phillips head screwdriver. We all know better. We all know better. That's not how you hang a sign. Anyone who's actually hung a sign. But going back to this Trump administration, they are desperate. And desperate times, as they say, call for desperate measures. My concern is what that desperation leads to. Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois said that it could lead to a war, an unnecessary war with Venezuela. Well, I mean, he's not wrong. The violence has escalated in international waters right off the coast of Venezuela. If it were reversed and Venezuela was doing that to the United States in international waters off the coast, let's say, of Los Angeles, we would immediately respond with military strikes on land. The fact that it hasn't escalated beyond what it is right now is surprising to me, but I would not be surprised if this administration further escalated that conflict to get us, even right now, I'm talking about Venezuela and not talking about the Epstein files. Mm-hmm. That is conscious. That is intentional. That is by design. I don't know if it's going to work, but if anything, as we look at it again from 30,000 feet, it speaks to the level of desperation. Donald Trump does not want to go down in history as the president linked to Jeffrey Epstein. He does not want you to see him for who he is. He does not want you to know that, at least until recently, he was not as wealthy as he purported himself to be. He does not want you to know how badly his health, cognitively and physically, have deteriorated in recent months. He does not want you to see him for who he is right now, from his hair down to his feet and his walking from here to there. It is all a facade. And he knows deep down inside, in his quiet moments, or at least his moments off camera, that there will be nothing more disastrous. Everything is a disaster to him, but there's nothing more disastrous than having the proverbial curtain moved and you get to see the wizard of MAGA for who he truly is. And to that end, he will do anything to protect that facade, that persona, the belief that he is their retribution, that he is the protector of all things MAGA. And if anything, it should tell you just how damning the Jeffrey Epstein files are, possibly for not only him, but especially him.
Do we have the True Social post, Albert? I'll read it to you. This is him flailing about, and this is what we've got so far with the blame game. Now he says that the Democrats are using the Epstein hoax involving Democrats, not Republicans, to try to deflect from their disastrous shutdown and all of their other failures. I will be asking AG Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots at the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, JP Morgan, Chase, he said, and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him. He said, this is another Russia scam with all arrows pointing to the Democrats. So this is the blame game that begins.
Kim, I remember, and I think you remember, we're both old enough to remember when there was this invisible partition between the White House and the Department of Justice, where the president did not ask for, did not get updates regarding, did not involve himself in any of the investigations. Why? Because the DOJ would be the agency to investigate the White House if need be, thanks to this guy called Richard Nixon. And to have a president openly call for not only an investigation, but a pointed investigation of specific and key individuals who could be considered either political adversaries or members of the opposition party, should tell you how far our country has fallen in just a few years. This dates back to the first Trump administration, but it wasn't this bad and this egregious and obvious, where you have the president just saying, hey, DOJ, go investigate that person regarding Jeffrey Epstein. And we all know, given Letitia James, James Comey, and others, the implication is find me something that can be used for an indictment. You don't need the evidence. You don't need the grand jury. Just make it happen. That's why when people say, why do you use the word fascist? That's why, right there. That's it. Speaking out against the administration, then all of a sudden you're under not only political persecution, but also prosecution. That's fascism. Right there. And they say, well, you shouldn't use that word. You shouldn't use that type of political rhetoric. It leads to violence. We're not advocating violence, but let's call a thing a thing. If you are acting like a racist and someone calls you a racist, okay? If you are acting like a fascist and someone calls you a fascist, or say that you have fascist tendencies, okay? People now in America, and before we go to news, I think this is what I want to end on. People now are more concerned, obsessed, and angered with the title than the actual behavior. Republicans will say, don't call us Nazis. Don't call us fascists. But in the analysis of the behavior, in the embrace of neo-Nazis, in the administration of this government, it is in alignment, it is very similar to, it is indicative of. So if it's like you don't want the title, but you're A-okay with all of the behavior. You don't want to be called it, but you're A-okay with being it and doing it repeatedly. And you dare people to not point it out. Call a thing a thing. If you're only going after brown people in regard to immigration, and you're racially profiling the brown people, and you're getting citizens caught up in it, it is then fair for me to say, hey, that's racist. It really is. And if you're going and picking up people off the street and you're calling for investigations of people who may politically oppose you, if you're fabricating indictments without even the support of actual evidence and probable cause, then yes, that's fascism. Now, if there's another word that you would like me to use that's more acceptable, more pleasing, that you find is more tasteful, more agreeable, easier for you to swallow, I'm all for it. But in the meantime, these other words will do. It's a Friday. You got to let it all go, Kim, because I can't hold back. Mark is coming back soon.
This is your moment. Let it all free.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim, how about some news?
I like it. Let's do it. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The House will vote on a measure that forces the Justice Department to release all of its Jeffrey Epstein case files. House Speaker Mike Johnson is required to put the bill on the floor after a discharge petition related to the matter reached the 218 signatures needed. This follows the release of emails from Epstein to his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as a journalist that referenced Trump, claiming in one that President Trump, quote, knew about the girls. Meanwhile, President Trump may have the final say in whether the complete Epstein files are ever even released. If enough Republicans approve the measure, it will go to President Trump's desk for his signature, and then Trump could choose to veto that legislation, leaving Congress to vote again to override the veto. How does it look, Mo, if Trump votes to veto it? Does it look like he's not so transparent?
Look, he's that desperate, and he doesn't care about the appearance of transparency more than the appearance of evidence and damning emails and photos and videos. He has to pick his poison, and I think he'll choose the veto as opposed to the reality of the evidence.
That's what it looks like. The federal employees today are returning to work despite some uncertainty over paychecks after the government shutdown. The White House reportedly has urged federal agencies to send paychecks as fast as possible to workers who've been without pay, some expected to get paychecks as soon as this weekend. The race to be California's next governor might be adding another big name. Congressman Eric Swalwell said to be considering a run. He has been a Democratic representative from the Bay Area for 12 years and, of course, a vocal critic of Trump. A couple of sources telling MSNBC that it's all but decided that he will be running for governor. This comes days after U.S. Democratic Senator Alex Padilla decided not to run for governor, senator from California. It also comes as the White House asked the Justice Department to investigate Swalwell for alleged mortgage and tax fraud. Swalwell believes the Trump administration is targeting him for political reasons. How interesting that story about him being investigated comes out along with the news that he may be considering a gubernatorial run.
What a coincidence. It's almost like serendipity or something.
What a coinky dink. There's been an arrest in connection with the shooting of an athletic director of a California community college that was featured in the Netflix docuseries Last Chance U. John Beam was shot at Laney College in Oakland on Thursday and remains in critical condition. Police are not giving details on the arrest made in the case. Beam was the school's longtime football coach when he appeared on that Netflix streaming show. So that all went down yesterday at Laney College in Oakland. That statue that shows President Trump skipping and holding hands with Jeffrey Epstein has now found another new temporary home. It's called Best Friends Forever, the statue, and it was put up on the National Mall September 23rd, almost immediately removed by the U.S. Park Police for alleged permit violations. It reappeared briefly October 2nd, was taken down, there it is, taken down a few days later. The statue now stands at the corner of 14th and V, as in Victory, in Northwest DC, in front of a Busboys and Poets location. A sign posted near the statue calls it a form of political satire designed to spark conversation on the relationship between Trump and Epstein. That statue reportedly remains at the location until Monday. Speaking of monuments to things, there is a Southern California city renaming a stretch of roadway after conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The city of Westminster will replace the signs of All American Way between Westminster Boulevard and 13th with new signs that say Charlie Kirk Way. Despite pushback from some community members, the city council voted 4-1 in favor of honoring the now deceased founder of Turning Point USA. He passed away after being shot during a speaking engagement at Utah Valley University on September 10th at the age of 31. So now he has a street named after him. That's exciting.
Okay.
Georgia's case against President Trump and others regarding the 2020 election fallout will continue. The Prosecuting Attorney's Council of Georgia was tasked with finding a new prosecutor in the Fulton County by today. Now the head of the council announced he will prosecute the case himself. His name is Pete Skandalakis. The charges allege that the president and several co-defendants attempted to have the results of the 2020 election in Georgia overturned. Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis was removed from the case after a relationship with the special prosecutor came to light there. And that's not the only news involving the attempt to overturn the 2020 election. The Nevada State Supreme Court, allowing the criminal case against 6 so-called fake electors to proceed. They were charged for their alleged role in efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The decision is reversing a lower court's dismissal of the case after a judge says it was filed in the wrong venue. Now the case moving forward against 6 so-called fake electors. Oh, that we have. Pepsi is launching a colorless a colorless alternative for its Cheetos and Doritos brands. The company is introducing its Simply NKD offerings, which will feature the new snack products made without artificial flavors or dyes. Is it part of the Maha movement? I don't know. The product launch comes as federal regulators are planning to phase out petroleum-based synthetic dyes in the nation's food supply products by the end of next year. And since it's a day we welcome the culture blaster, Michael Snyder, I will say 2 movies are off to a good start at the box office. Now You See Me and Now You Don't made $2.1 million from Thursday previews. The Running Man brought in $1.9 million. Both films are set to battle it out for first place, both projected to make between $20 and $25 million over the weekend. So we have that. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is the good stuff, the good coffee, the good tea, the stuff you want, the stuff everybody wants for Christmas. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Try the Lion's Mane coffee, the Lion's Mane tea. Mark loves the Ocotillo espresso, the El Gato. Check it out. The tasting notes are below every product offered. I love the teas. Mark loves the coffees. And I got a message last night about the spices, which I have not even tried yet, but apparently the spices are amazing. Another good stocking stuffer. It's all at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And if you do find something you're interested in, please use the super secret Mark Thompson Show checkout code that'll save you 10% off. It is Mark T, no spaces, Mark T, and that'll get you 10% off. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim?
Yeah.
I think it's time to shout out some of our donors, some of the people who've offered us some tips.
Okay.
Let's make sure we remind them about Mark's merch, all of that.
We like it. Well, let's start with this one then from Steve S., who throws in a 5 and says, "Rest in peace, Jim Avila, a real journalist and a good human being. Fridays won't be the same without you." So that is very true. And thank you, Steve. Luis says, "Operation Southern Spear, don't tell me we are getting ready to invade Venezuela for oil and to cover up Epstein under the ruse of fighting narco-terrorism." And thank you for the 5, Luis, as well. Richard Delamater with another 2. "Want to see Trump humiliation," he writes. "South Park last night. I didn't see it, so
but it's probably very humiliating, I'm sure."
Valiant with a 20. "Peace to Jim Avila and his family." Thank you for that. And thank you, Mark, for bringing him to us. Thank you, Mark, indeed, for that. What a pleasure and a joy it was to get to know him. Sausalito Steve with a 20. "Go Mo, go."
Thank you.
Steve. CC Ryder throwing in 10. "Why did the Trump administration pressure the NFL to stop using end racism in the end zones? They want it normalized and not called out," she writes.
That's true.
So thank you, CC. Appreciate all of the contributions. And the super chats and super stickers are open. Love very much to to have the help keeping the show going. You can also find us on Patreon and PayPal. The MarkThompsonShow.com. The MarkThompsonShow.com is where you can find that. There are links, the MarkThompsonShow.com website. You can see at the bottom of the screen, links to click through for Patreon and PayPal. And of course, the super chats and super stickers are open as well. And since I'm on a roll, Mo, getmarkmerch.com.
Hey.
Great t-shirts, really, really cool. We love having pictures where people are wearing these all over the world sent to us. Courtney has done just an amazing job designing these shirts. They have some sayings on the front that are peaceful and resistance oriented, but on the back it says The Mark Thompson Show. So the coffee cups, the t-shirts, all that can be found at getmarkmerch.com. And if you do buy something and you're out in the world wearing it, send us a picture. The Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com is the website. And there you go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I saw this story and Kim reminded me of this story, and I'm going to take it a different direction. The news headline is Seattle has a new mayor, Katie Wilson. The election was previously last week, But now they finished counting and they've officially certified. And Wilson is only 43 years old, won by 2,000 votes, the thinnest margin for a mayoral race in recent Seattle history. But if you also know anything about Katie Wilson, she's self-branded as progressive and socialist. And this speaks to a larger, what I believe, movement in not only politics, but also the governance of municipalities, where people seemingly are more open to the idea of publicly embracing officials who characterize themselves as either democratic socialists or straight up socialists. Me, I have always been, and this is what I really want you to hear from you, Kim. I have always been reticent, as far as strategy goes, to recommend candidates defining themselves in such a way. You think of Zohran Mamdani. He won the election, but he spent a good 2-3 months having to defend and explain the label of democratic socialists. You know, you have AOC and you have Bernie Sanders ad nauseum having to explain over and over again democratic socialism. And I think to the point where it gets in the way of the intended message and the intended policy positions, and you allow the other side to mischaracterize who you are. For all the effort that Mamdani put into explaining democratic socialism, he was still called a communist. He's still called a communist. And I'm not saying that, there's no value in self-determining your candidacy and not letting your opponent define you. But I do believe you cut yourself off from some of the electorate because, going back to the 30 to 35% ignorance of the population, these distinctions are probably lost on them and they may not understand. Put it this way. I would love to believe that the majority of Americans understand the difference between socialism as an economic system, socialism as a form of government, and also communism as an economic system and communism as a form of government. I would love to believe that America is capable of having a majority of people understanding the difference between socialism in Norway and socialism in Venezuela. But we have a largely uninformed electorate, and people usually go to the lowest common denominator and just call everything communism, or they hold up Venezuela as the example for everything, which is quote unquote socialism, and not understanding the subtle distinctions and differences. And when many candidates, and it did, and I say this knowing good and well, it did not stop Mamdani. It did not stop Katie Wilson, but I do believe it made the road that much more difficult. Kim, do you think there's any truth in that?
I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I also think you're asking too much of the American people who can't even figure out that they're the ones paying for Trump tariffs. And now we want to throw down a comparative government class on them. They're never going to figure it out. I don't think that is going to work at all. People aren't going to know it. And in the past, America and movies and propaganda has spent so much time drilling into America that oh, you're a dirty socialist pinko commie. These are fighting words, right? You couldn't be any lower on the scumbag chain if you're a dirty pinko commie socialist. All these words, regardless of the truth of what it really means. And so there's something to you when you say, just don't say it, be it, but don't say it. We don't have to harp it, over and over again to let people marinate in it. I wonder, though, to your point, is there a difference between being a democratic socialist and just being a progressive Democrat? And would that be enough to just say you're a progressive?
I think you're right. And maybe someone who's a democratic socialist will say, no. The democratic socialist would focus more on the economic policies of progressive politics as opposed to just a progressive, which is more, I guess, inclusive. I just always think in terms of strategy. Don't create problems for yourself as a
Sure.
candidate that you don't necessarily have. And you also touched on something else, Kim, the cognitive dissonance, where we all, for the most part, grew up in and around the Cold War era when Russia was bad. Communism was bad. And even today, you have people on social media and politicians and elected officials talk about communism is bad, while simultaneously putting their arm around all things Russia in support of Vladimir Putin. It's like, how is it you're worried about a quote unquote communist, and this is air quotes, Mamdani becoming mayor of New York, but you have no problem with whatever Putin is doing? The former KGB agent. How do you not understand that the communism that you're so concerned about, the communism existing in real time and trying to bring down the United States, is right there in Vladimir Putin, who's in bed with not only Donald Trump, possibly Jeffrey Epstein from more recent published reports? I mean, if you want to find a boogeyman, it's right there. You don't have to create one. He's there. It exists. He's already tried to influence American elections and undermine democracy. Why? KGB. I don't get Americans most time. I don't understand how they don't connect those dots. Those are the easy dots to connect.
Yeah. So Katie Wilson, the new mayor of Seattle, is, as Mo says, a self-described socialist. She doesn't have a lot of experience in politics, but here's what she's promising, Mo. She wants to find progressive, and she does use the word progressive, ways to pay for housing and other basic services that the city needs. She said Seattle has been a kind of laboratory for progressive policy. She's inferred that her administration will pursue similar ideas in the future, pledging to pursue a $1 million bond to pay for home construction and establish new protections for renters who make up to 56% of people that are living in Seattle.
I wish her well. If the best way to convince people is to demonstrate success with your policies. I don't know if Mamdani is going to be successful in New York, but if he is, it's going to open the floodgates for all sorts of politicians. And I root for the success of America and Americans. If Katie Wilson can be successful in Seattle, demonstrably successful, objectively successful. And I define success as improvement from where you were to where you are. If she and others of similar political persuasion can do that, then the Democrats can do just about whatever they want, because they have the numbers to support these politicians. The only problem is, I think some of these public pronouncements get in the way. AOC, if she's going to be running for senator or president, I'll be looking very closely at how she chooses to define herself and her politics. It's one thing when you're running for Congress in a relatively small congressional district and the people are more familiar with you, as opposed to a statewide election or a national election where you're dealing with a much larger swath of people of varying economic and varying educational attainments, varying levels of understanding of these issues, and what may work in your particular borough of New York may not work in upstate New York. So I'm very interested to see, and I do believe that she's running for Senate. I do believe that she's going to challenge Schumer, and I do believe that she probably would be the odds-on favorite to win.
This race in Seattle with Katie Wilson, she won only by 2,000 votes. So it was very tight on that. But you may be right about AOC. She might be stepping right in for Schumer. We'll see.
It's the timing is right more than anything. And if she doesn't step in, I don't know about the other senator, Gillibrand, in terms of when she'll be up for election. This might be the window of opportunity for AOC, having nothing to do with whether you're a supporter of her or not. I have always been very lukewarm on her. I think she has great energy and a passion and a political sense about her. I don't agree with all of her ideas and all of her methods. And yes, and I'm the first to admit I'm a different generation. I get that. There's some things that young politicians, which they do, which don't speak to me and don't suggest to me that I want them as my particular leader. But I don't live in New York, so I don't worry about who the mayor of New York is going to be in the way that it was a nationalized race. I don't worry about who's going to be a senator in New York. If New Yorkers choose Mamdani, and they have, God bless them. If the state of New York voters should choose in the future Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as their next senator, God bless them. I don't ever try to suggest that I know what's best for voters who live on the other side of the country. Conversely, don't try to tell me what's best for me here in California, because we always hear about California's gone to hell in a handbasket, or California's this, and it's some Floridian, some foreign bot, some Christian conservative in Idaho who has no idea of what this state is like. And Kim, I need not tell you, or Albert, I need not tell you what is happening in San Francisco or whatever is happening in Los Angeles and San Diego. That's like 3 states away. There's no real connection between the major metropolitan areas in California as opposed to other states.
What I'd say, though, about electing Democratic Socialists in 2 of America's biggest cities, and I don't know that that would too constitutes a trend, but I do think it says something about something you talked about this week, Mo, the unaffordability of America.
Mm-hmm.
What does it say that in 2 of America's biggest cities, these Democratic Socialists overcame the stigma attached to socialism and managed to get into office because people are struggling? You have these both cities very expensive to live in, the costs rising and rising and rising. As a matter of fact, I was just reading a story about a steady rise in foreclosure rates, pointing to weakness in the housing market. And so here you have these 2 candidates coming in saying they're going to help make things affordable as far as housing and other things that people need to live in these big metropolitan areas. So while it's far away from us, I look at it as maybe a statement on what Americans are going through, that they're willing to say, socialist, huh? Well, let's give it a shot.
Let's give it a shot. And I agree with that. If anything, 2 things, as they say, can't be true. Katie Wilson's win is definitely positive for the Democratic Party on a just political level. I'm just offering an alternative as far as how you present it going forward. And I would say it's always good political strategy, it's best practices to not do anything to self-limit your appeal. In other words, for example, Barack Obama, you knew that there were going to be all sorts of chants of he's a black nationalist or something, he's going to be pro-black people. And Barack Obama never got into the game of trying to self-define what his religion was, or with going back to the Jeremiah Wright controversy. He just was a politician. Here are my policies. He eventually championed healthcare. And I think that helped with his broader appeal. And if you come out and say, I'm a socialist or a democratic socialist, sometimes in some ears, that's louder than the fullness of your policies or your proposed agenda. And I would not want to do anything as a candidate which makes it more difficult for me. And let me put it another way. Katie Wilson won by 2,000 votes. Maybe she would have won by 35,000. Maybe it wouldn't have gone to a recount. You know, it's not just a result. Going back to Tuesdays ago about the election, it's also the margins involved. It could be the difference in winning and having a mandate. It could be the difference in winning and losing. We're talking about very small margins, and these things absolutely matter. So congratulations to Katie Wilson, but I think there is a thought experiment to be had going forward about how candidates choose to define themselves, whether they're going to get on the Democratic Socialist train, and whether that is good for the party, big picture, moving into 2028. I do suspect you're going to see more candidates professing to be democratic socialists. I don't know if that is good for the party big picture.
It seems like the opposition would call you out on it, whether you called yourself a democratic socialist or not. Wes throwing down a 5, saying it's just parsing words. Any social program is a socialist program. SNAP, farming subsidies, FEMA, and other disaster relief that gives money to people. Thanks, Wes.
Yeah, you know, absolutely true. I mean, it's socialism when you talk about public education. It's socialism when you're talking about emergency services. It's socialism when you talk about our taxes going towards roads that we don't drive on, schools that we don't attend, services that we don't use. But that is for a long, thorough discussion of it. And politics is about sound bites, and politics is about short messaging. And if you are spending time explaining, as they say, you're losing. And I can't quantify this, but I can qualify it in the sense of, think of all the headwinds against Mamdani that I believe. Now, you can't do anything about him being a Muslim. You know, if you're a Muslim, that's who you are. I believe he would have received less resistance if he just gave his policies. I believe that Bernie Sanders would have received less resistance if he didn't self-declare as a democratic socialist, and the same with AOC. That may work where they are. I don't know if it works beyond where they are. In other words, I would not, there's not a transitive property here where because it worked here, it automatically works there. Or because it worked here and there, it also works in the third location. And this is something that the Democratic Party big picture, I believe, has to be very careful in the unified messaging of the party going into possibly the 2028 convention. What types of policies that they publicly profess to support as opposed to individual candidates.
Amy B says AOC will have her time. First, get her elected to the Senate.
Yeah, and I think that's the likely next step for her. Would she run for governor? A lot of explaining to do, time and time again. If Katie Wilson, the progressive candidate, had just won, okay. But now we're having a discussion about the socialist Katie Wilson and whether socialist policies work in Seattle and beyond. I'm just talking about the least path of resistance to becoming elected. That fundamentally should not change how Katie Wilson plans to govern as mayor. You can talk about the same policies. I just worry about affixing a label to yourself, which may make it difficult, bigger picture. And that may be wrong. That may be the route to go to win elections, and they'll demonstrate that.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm interested to watch what happens in both New York City and Seattle to see how these policies work for people. And it may be that if they do, and folks find themselves being able to afford more things and living in much better ways, that the rest of the country will take note, and suddenly the word socialist won't be so dirty anymore.
One more thing before we get to Michael Shure, we have a robust political discussion. Just want to hit on this very quickly. Saw this story, and I know you did as well, Kim, talking about this Gallup poll, how religion no longer important in the majority of U.S. households. That's not necessarily a new revelation, no pun intended, but it shows a consistent theme, trajectory, and progression of the diminution of the importance of at least religion in most U.S. households. Maybe that's something that we should talk about with Michael Shure as we open up. Michael Shure, he now joins us on the show as customary every Friday, talk a little bit about politics and more. Michael, my friend, my brother, how are you today?
I'm well, Mo. How you doing?
I am doing well. There's so much to talk about, and I don't necessarily want to entertain all the Jeffrey Epstein distractions, but it's a part of the larger picture of what's happening on Capitol Hill, where everything is still connected to Jeffrey Epstein on some level. Either it's the discharge petition, or it is the response by the Trump administration trying to point fingers at Bill Clinton, or you had J.B. Pritzker talking about the concern of whether Trump would try to take us to war to distract us from it. What was your takeaway from the week around all things Epstein?
Well, I think that it's fascinating because it made you look at the shutdown through a perspective that I think we probably discussed here, which is that Trump was in no hurry to end this shutdown because he knew that at the end of the shutdown, and this is not typical of all presidents, I think every president wants to protect themselves. I don't think they would all shut the government down so as to delay the release of something that they knew would not be favorable for them. But I think that everything around this shutdown, as far as Trump was concerned, was about the Epstein files. I think that making sure that Alita Grijalva was not sworn in was Mike Johnson doing the bidding of Donald Trump. I think that it cannot be ignored. So would he take us to war to do that? I wouldn't put very much past this president. He just shut the government down for it. That said, Republicans are not happy about Epstein. And whether it's Donald Trump saying, let's look at the Democrats who were involved with Epstein, that doesn't absolve him of blame. He's also the president of the United States. So I think as it gets injected into every conversation, it's not just Democrats who don't like Trump who are talking about Epstein. It's Republicans, and it's Republican rank and file. And I have to tell you, having spent a lot of time in the field talking to MAGA voters, it's MAGA voters who said, well, if we find out the Epstein stuff is true, even for us, that would be a bit too far. And that's more than just anecdotal. That is, those are dozens and dozens and dozens of voters who said that same thing to me in different ways.
What if you were, and this is hypothetical, but if you were a Republican member of Congress right now, and heretofore you have toed the line, huh?
That's not hypothetical, no. I'm a Republican member of Congress.
And you hew very closely to the line of all things Trump and whatever Trump has done and said you have supported. What is your political calculus right now as far as managing and maneuvering this very dangerous Jeffrey Epstein thing, which could implicate the president, but more importantly, could possibly put you in a very precarious position as a Republican member of Congress?
You know, I think it's very easy to use the rhetoric as a politician of saying how distasteful you find it, how repugnant it is, and how you would hold Trump responsible for it if it turns out true, without actually leaving the platform in totality. The other thing that we're going to find out right now is that Congress is made up of 535 very, very ambitious people. And some of them want to be president, and some of them who are Republican want to be president. And as time goes on, whether it's about Epstein or other things, there are going to be people from his own party who are going to try and differentiate themselves from him, from MAGA, if they find that, especially in 2026, if Trump voters don't show up when he's not on the ballot, it's going to be a lot easier for these Republicans to go against Trump. So on issues of Epstein, it's a no-brainer. I mean, many presidents would say yes, would give you the go-ahead to criticize me on this because we need to keep this majority. So criticizing him while also saying you're going to vote with what the White House's priorities are for a Republican, that seems okay.
Given the SCOTUS ruling on presidential immunity, I'm willing to believe that this president is not concerned about actual consequences coming out of the Jeffrey Epstein revelations or emails or anything which should come out of the files. But if you were Donald Trump, in the best way that you could characterize what you may think this president is thinking, what is the worst case scenario for him, and what is the best case scenario for him to get through this?
I mean, the best case scenario is the best case scenario that he's been able to get through every single, and I'm answering the second part first, is that he's been able to get through everything, that he has been impermeable to any kind of scandal. He's a man who's been impeached twice. He's been convicted in court. He has lost a presidential election, come back and won another one. I mean, this is somebody who we used to call Reagan the Teflon president. Nothing sticks to this guy. And if it does stick to him, he wears it as a badge of honor. And that is a very, very different way than we've seen politicians work in American history. It used to really hurt a president or any politician or anyone you may know in life if they've done something that is either illegal or more distasteful. And with this guy, it just almost keeps bolstering him. He's able to paint himself as a victim. Now, the worst case scenario for him is that if he starts to lose control and MAGA loses control as a movement, Trump out of office with low popularity in 2028, 2029, returns him to a place where he could be a target of law. And if he doesn't have the support back that he got after his last loss, then it's going to be very, very difficult for him, especially if the Justice Department falls into other hands. So I think that, should Democrats win in 28, and there's we're getting way ahead of ourselves. He hasn't even been president for a year in this second term. But if that were to happen, then he becomes a target of the law. And I think the worst case scenario for Donald Trump is always jail, right? Is always having to answer, and also to see that a lot of his finances crumble.
We know that in his response thus far, the president has called for investigations into Bill Clinton, specifically related to Jeffrey Epstein, which I thought was odd because you are further promoting the Epstein story being covered in the news. And we know that not only were you friends with Epstein, you were friends with Clinton. I see this as a bluff. He doesn't actually want an investigation into Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton conceivably could say, yes, put me on trial and I'll talk about the times that I saw Donald as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I don't know that it's a bluff. I think whenever Donald Trump loves whataboutisms, right? I mean, he loves saying, "Hey, but that guy did it too," or she did it, or how come they got away with it and I can't get away with it? Look, it's not great for the Clinton legacy, but Bill Clinton is an older man who is no longer president anymore. And Donald Trump is an older man who is now president. And I always think that the foibles of a sitting president are worse than anything one of his predecessors may or may not have done. And, Bill Clinton also hasn't spent a great deal of time denying anything. He hasn't had to answer for it in such a way. And Donald Trump has lied at every turn about it. And I think that's different. I'm not excusing any of it. And this is a bad guy. And I don't know the depths of his, how horrible people knew he was at the time. I just simply don't know that. But I know that for a sitting president to have that association is poisonous.
Also, we know that just a day or so ago, we have recently reopened the government, but it seems like the shutdown was 4 months ago in terms of a news cycle. Is there any lasting impact of the shutdown just politically? We know it's still, there's a lasting impact for Americans who haven't been fully reinstated as far as their jobs or what have you, SNAP benefits. But as far as politically, are there any lasting effects?
I think that here's the thing. I think that what the lasting effects of this are that it sets the table for 2026. While Democrats are frustrated that their party kind of ended the shutdown by crossing over and voting with Republicans, they did get an intangible out of this, which is they were the ones who shut the government down ostensibly about health care. They knew they weren't going to get any concessions from the Republicans, but they didn't get any concessions from Republicans. And Republicans are going to have to answer for that, either with a healthcare plan of their own, which they've never been able to come up with. They voted down Obamacare. God, it had to have been over 50 or 60 times in the Senate, and yet they never had a kind of a counter to it. They didn't have their plan to fix healthcare. They don't have one now. So in 2026, the Democrats are still going to be able to say that they are the party that wants to protect your healthcare, that wants to protect these subsidies. And that's valuable. That's super valuable. That's valuable in states where Democrats don't run well as well. You look at a state like Florida, you look at a state like Arizona, where they've had, middling success. I mean, they do have senators and they do have the governor there, but presidentially it's been up and down for Democrats there. I think this is very, very important stuff. I know there are Democrats that are frustrated and angry and think that it was a party that bent, but I don't think it was all lost for Democrats, and I don't think that it was all won for Republicans. I think Republicans have to find an answer on healthcare, because if not, they're going to get stung by it, especially with Trump not on the ballot.
In a political sense, we have to be able to walk and chew gum. It's not just the domestic issues, but the international issues. Some of them are being used as a way to distract from the domestic issues. We know that another fisherman's boat was destroyed, I believe, last night. Another 4 people were killed under the guise of protecting America and America's interests from the flow of drugs. I'm personally surprised that this hasn't been more of an issue for the Trump administration, not pushing aside the Epstein scandal, but I'm surprised that this hasn't provided more pressure against the administration, given what seems to be international lawlessness. Now, from where you sit, is this something which could also be a serious issue of contention for the administration?
Insofar as geopolitical issues matter in a political sense in America today, yes, I do. I don't think it's going to have staying power and lasting power. I think that especially a president who ran as an America firster, so much of it became about the domestic issues. So much of it, so much of our politics right now is based on how much a carton of eggs costs for whatever reason. It won't remain that way forever. But I think when you are worried about the cost of healthcare and a carton of eggs, Venezuela is not the pressing issue that a lot of people want it to be. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. I'm just saying that that's the political reality, at least for now. Ukraine withstood a battering last night over the last 2 days. And these are wars that the president said would end within moments of his taking the presidency. So those issues are not going to go away. And a president does. Every president has done it. It knows no party or no personality. They do look overseas when things are not good at home. But this is a president who promised more at home. This is a party that promised more at home, and that's really going to be the political reality. I don't think it's going to be about hitting Venezuela, even though that does feel like a distraction, even though it does feel like something that is curious in many ways. I don't think it's going to have the political power that other issues do.
Decades ago, strategist, political advisor James Carville famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." So if you're right, Michael Shure, and people are more concerned and more focused on these eggs and groceries and what they call kitchen table issues, and going back to Jeffrey Epstein, because everything is connected to Jeffrey Epstein in some way, we know the president has promised / floated both at the same time this idea of these $2,000 tariff rebate checks for people. I guess they're going to be in the mail sometime after we get our Doge $5,000 checks. From your just conversations, is this something which is gaining traction anywhere? Do people actually believe this?
Well, I mean, yes, I think that people do believe it. Look, I'm never going to doubt the ability of people to believe something that somebody like Donald Trump or a politician will say. I've seen him on too many stages in too many places in this country and seen people believe everything he says, only to then be disappointed, but not to air that disappointment, save for maybe some farmers who were, a little ticked off about tariffs a couple of, back in 2018 and then again now. I just think that the issue of trying to buy these votes becomes transparent. And I do think, everybody always says, well, Trump is on the ballot. When Trump is not on the ballot, it makes a big difference when his name is not on there. And I think whatever he tries to do, what the Republicans are selling doesn't have as many buyers as what the Democrats are trying to undo right now. And until that changes, I don't think any of these sort of political trickery is going to have an impact.
One thing I've noticed, and I don't understand as someone who's followed this for many years and decades, is how and why the Trump administration is all over the map. I mean that literally. On one hand, you say it's America first, how they want to improve the economic prospectus here in the U.S., and at the same time, $40 billion goes out the door to Argentina. And the president is also touting buying Argentinian beef at a discount, much to the detriment of American suppliers. How is it that this cognitive dissonance doesn't have more of a negative effect on the Trump administration? It's like they want two things to be true at the same time, even though they're mutually exclusive and diametrically opposed.
Not to mention, Mo, I mean, he also took a bulldozer to the East Room of the White House. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's both symbolic and actual what he's doing in ignoring the country, but he's also attacking the country by attacking a symbol of the country and changing it in his own way. I think what part of, and I think you have to credit them if that's creditable. Part of the success of Trump has been chaos. It's been creating a mess so that the people who are following it, like you and me and like Jane and Joe Voter, can't keep their attention in one place for very long. They're just constantly moving back and forth, and that has proven successful. So once something doesn't go right, once you say, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to build a wall, and then you don't build a wall, by the time you realize that he didn't build a wall, you're looking at something else. And I think that's what's happening again right now with Trump and with the way this administration is governing, is they just try and sow as much chaos as they can and believe that people will not be able to concentrate on what is bad and really what is good as well, because you don't have that attention span. And until it's not successful, you have to say it's worked for them.
Not to only talk about the Trump administration, I think there are two other conversations I'd like to have with you very briefly before I let you go, Michael Shure. There's also what the Democrats are or are not doing. We have the Democrats who've had some recent election wins, some successes. I was just talking, I don't know if you heard the portion of the conversation, I was talking about Katie Wilson, how she won her mayoral bid in Seattle, and she's openly professed as a socialist. And I was offering some pushback to that. I said, I don't know about the political or conventional wisdom, and I don't know if that's conventional in today's world, but the conventional wisdom of defining yourself or offering yourself as a socialist or democratic socialist. Does that make it more difficult for you as a Democratic political candidate to get elected? And I know it's a long form question. Let me ask it like this. Did Katie Wilson make it more difficult for herself? Did Zoran Mamdani make it more difficult for himself by the public proclamations of being a socialist or democratic socialist?
I don't know that they made it more difficult for themselves. They both won. I think they may have made it more difficult for the Democratic Party to distance themselves from the mayors of two very important cities, because they're going to, at some point, they're going to have to. But I think, and I've said this about Zoran Mamdani, is that I think he is far too smart to be dumb. So I don't think he's going to govern in a way that is going to alienate Democrats. I just don't think that's going to happen. And yes, he's going to be labeled, and people who support him are going to be labeled. It's why you saw, you could call it spinelessness, but sometimes it's politically astute to distance yourself from somebody who may seem toxic. Again, Seattle, the mayor of Seattle doesn't hold the same national allure as the mayor of New York does, but I see your point, and there are similarities there. The other thing is that, whether or not it's about their socialism, democratic socialism, it's about going against the establishment. And that is always in vogue at different times throughout history. And it doesn't mean that it's a wave that's going to go against the establishment. It's going to mean that some establishment, some, dyed-in-the-wool Democrats are going to lose because there is a wave like this. So you see a Cuomo, a dynastic family like the Cuomo family upended in New York by somebody who is a kind of a Johnny-come-lately, but a good one and a successful one. But we'll see where it goes. The other thing is, do they hurt themselves? No mayor of New York has ever gone on to higher office. So I don't know how much Mamdani is going to hurt himself here. If he succeeds or exceeds that office, he will be the first to ever do that, and then he will have disproven that. But for the most part, these people mayors, especially of New York, I don't know so much about Seattle, mayors of New York don't really have political futures.
Are we looking at the end of Chuck Schumer's career?
Only if he wants it to be. I don't think that anything he did here would the voters of New York are absolutely the last arbiters of that. If he gets a primary challenge from Representative Ocasio-Cortez or anybody else, that could end it. Sure, the ballot box could end it, but I don't think that he has lost hold of the leadership by any means. I think that there are leaders in waiting, and he knows that, but I think it's going to be just sort of the chronology of time that dictates when he leaves. And look, he may stand down from leadership. He certainly wouldn't do it now. And I don't think that he thinks he lost in this last, even though my personal belief that he was behind those votes going to the other side, even though he voted against it. I think that he knew who could get the government back going. And he comfortably thought the Democrats still own health care, which until proven otherwise, they do. And that he thought the time was right to come back, get the Epstein stuff out there and do this. So he found people that were either not running again, like Dick Durbin, or people who were embattled, like John Fetterman, or people who weren't going to run for a couple of years, like the senators in Nevada. So and Gene Shaheen's not running. So I think that it was convenient. I don't know that to be true. I mean, that's hearsay. It's believable because that's the behavior of majority leaders and minority leaders on consequential votes. I don't think it's the end of Chuck Schumer unless he wants it to be. I'm not an alarmist about that. Whatever I think of Chuck Schumer as a leader, I don't think it's the end until he says it is, or until he loses at the ballot box.
These questions, Michael Shure, I appreciate you answering them. These questions, because I've long thought that, especially now, that the future of the Democratic Party is inextricably linked to the politics in New York. I wonder if Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is the future of the Democratic Party. That ties back to New York. I wonder if Chuck Schumer is the future minority leader of the party, or should be minority leader. That's also New York. And I want to juxtapose that to the recent retirement announcement of Nancy Pelosi, how she's not running for office. And I wonder whether that was not a signal to specifically Chuck Schumer about there needs to be a changing of the guard. Am I reading too much into that?
I think probably. I mean, I don't think that I agree with the New York thing, even though two leaders in Congress are from New York. New York is clearly a powerful place. California had the last nominee for president was from California. The Speaker of the House was from California. And, one of the presumed front runners in the 2028 election is the governor of California, who has been, even with the presence of Jeffries and Schumer, has been the number one critic, I would say, nationally of President Trump's. But that notwithstanding, is Hakeem Jeffries the right person? I look, there are people running for office against sitting incumbents, Democrats challenging incumbents in the House next year, who are now pledging that they won't support Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker.
Right.
It seems a curious tactic, because if you are running against somebody, you are going to get Hakeem Jeffries into your district if he's protecting his status as Speaker. And it's also very easy to say that on the campaign trail. Sometimes Nancy Pelosi, because she was such an astute politician, would tell people, say you're not going to support me for Speaker if that helps you. Criticize me if that helps you. Because they know when they get to Washington, there's going to be a lot of pressure to support, to be unanimous behind the Speaker. These are political tactics. And look, you're not getting the soaring oratory and the passion that a lot of Democrats want from people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. But for the moment, it's capable leadership, and we'll see where it takes them. I know what you're saying, but I don't think the jig is up yet for the New York politicians.
Maybe I've missed it, but it feels like Cory Booker has disappeared off the political landscape, with the exception of his filibuster and 25 hours behind the microphone. It seemed like he has slid into the background. Am I misreading that?
I mean, well, let me. I sort of want to disagree with you, but I know what you're saying. I don't think there's a foreground for a lot of Democrats, and so while as he slipped into the background, perhaps he's one of 100 senators. They've been in a shutdown. that's the problem of being in the minority in Congress, is that you just have no platform. So I don't think that there is really a foreground, except for a governor like Gavin Newsom, who can pick up and go to Brazil and make hay by attending a climate conference because our president isn't, who can get on the airwaves and criticize Donald Trump at every turn, who can put something on the ballot and campaign on it. So while Senator Booker is, we don't hear as much from him now. Without that filibuster, we wouldn't have heard a peep from any of them. So I defy anyone to find anyone who isn't Gavin Newsom right now, or maybe to some extent Pritzker and Westmore in Maryland, who have a loud Democratic voice.
Last question, and not as a curveball, it's just a change in discussion. We also briefly discussed this Gallup poll, how religion no longer important in the majority of U.S. households. That's a part of a larger trend, I think, that has been happening in America. I say this as a Christian, full disclosure. Politically, what does that say about the evolving demographics of voters and how it may help or hurt Democrats, if there's any connection you think you can make there?
Well, here's the thing. I think there's a big difference between a poll saying that it's not as important to translating to the campaign trail where you can minimize religion. So while it may be in decline, and I believe that, I think younger generations are less religious than older generations were and are, but I don't think it's not political currency until you can go out there on the campaign, on the hustings, as it were, and say, oh, these people are so caught up with religion. It's not about religion, right? You still cannot criticize religious people in this country, and I don't think anybody who's watching this or is on this is going to be alive when you can, and so in a sort of widespread way. So it's certainly interesting. It certainly shows that there are ways of influencing the populace that you don't have to tread as carefully, but Republicans are still going to need the Christian vote in order to get the nomination for president. And Democrats are not going to be able to go against, they're not going to be able to over-secularize the country as candidates either. So it's interesting, certainly. It's believable, but I don't know that it translates into politics yet.
Michael Shure, I love having these discussions with you. It's not like the topics that I'm going to bring up, but you're so versatile, so knowledgeable, and so relatable. You just make it easy, it just rolls off your tongue. And I love doing this with you. Usually I get to talk alongside of you, but to actually ask you the questions, it's been a treat while I've been hosting the Mark Thompson Show. Michael, thank you so much for what you do and coming on once again.
All right. Thanks, Mo. Thanks for those words. We'll see you later.
Be well.
Well, quickly, we got one comment from Depressed Canadian here. Do you see this, Mo?
Oh, on a serial, will the Oilers... it's brutal. We do Mo. We've always done 48 seconds of sports here.
Yes, okay.
And so these are our 48 seconds of sports, and it's a hockey question. I think the Oilers. There are goalies out there. I think they're going to end up with Nashville's goalie and giving up a lot for it. UC Saros would be my guess, is that he's going to go there, Depressed Canadian. But man, they look really flat and really bad, those Oilers, and they do need their creases in jeopardy right now.
I'm never going to root for the Oilers. Go Kings, go.
Okay, there you go. All right. See you later, guys.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim, I just had to throw that in there because the Oilers had knocked off the Kings in the playoffs, and the Oilers
like
and the Kings
three or four straight years. I feel like they make the playoffs.
Yes, it is a very tumultuous history. Okay.
Texas and the Oilers playing the Kings in the first round of the NHL playoffs.
Michael Shure, a huge hockey fan. So, yeah, we always talk hockey with him. Another note, though, and I'll throw this to you because it was addressed to you and Michael, but With Our Eyes Rise throws in 20 and says, on religion, did you know that the Ark of the Covenant is in Mount Kenya, which is the Mount Zion of all ancient texts? See the green lovers dream and join them daily. Mount Kenya for global peace. So With Our Eyes Rise likes to promote that. But thank you for the contribution. We appreciate that very much.
I did not know that. I hope they don't open it, because we all know, because of the Raiders lost Ark, it will probably kill everyone.
CC Ryder comes in with 10, says Democrats need to study and master Mamdani's style. What he did, says CC, is so effectively was counterattacks on socialism with strength and conviction. His solid, sensible answers persuaded the voters.
Certain things you can't teach. He is a talented politician, regardless of his political disposition. Yes, you can study it, but there's certain things I believe are innate in certain candidates. People have studied Barack Obama for years. They haven't been able to imitate or duplicate his style and resonance with voters. If people could duplicate it, they would print it out, they would market it, they would sell it. And that's why political parties are always on the lookout for young, talented, electable individuals. Certain things you just can't teach.
There's something about the way about someone as well, their personality, the way they are relatable to people. Those things are very hard to replicate. The Lady Beatrice with 5, especially important after our This Week in Politics segment. May the force be with you, Jim Avila. We will miss your contributions to our time together. Thank you, the Lady Beatrice. Appreciate that. And the warm words for Jim Avila. Eugenio de Arnal with 5. Mo and Kim, have a good weekend. Tell us, how is Mark and where is he? Thank you. Mark is in Colombia and he will be back on Monday. And he looks to be, if Instagram is any indication, having a grand time in Colombia. So he's doing really well.
I don't know about last night. He got his flight canceled, so he spent an extra day in Colombia. So.
Oh, no.
So, Kim, I will be on standby for Monday.
Okay. Thank you. I
no
appreciate
guarantees.
That. Oh, no. An extra day in Colombia. I could think of worse things.
Yeah. I've never been to South America. That's next on my list. I've been to Curacao, which is about 28 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Mm-hmm. That's as close as I've been. But that's next. My wife and I, we try to hit a different continent each time we travel, and South America probably will be next. We're supposed to go to Belize. I know that's not South America, but then use that as a jumping off point to go to South America.
Well, just stay out of Venezuela and perhaps Colombia as well.
Right.
Things seem to be heating up. I don't know. The top officials are supposed to present Trump with military options for Venezuela in the coming days. So we'll see where he goes with this. But this whole drumbeat to war with such a small country with not much of a military just seems almost ridiculous.
No, it is. But it's also perfect in a political sense where you could start and finish a war relatively quickly, not have to even worry about putting boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. And then use that to distract from all things Epstein, at least for a few weeks or a few months, if we were to actually commit to military aggression against Venezuela.
Smart military officials don't want their services to have to be used, right?
No.
They don't want to go to war. But now you've got so-called Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane, and other senior officials briefing the president on military options in the coming days. I don't trust Mr. Machismo, got to use a screwdriver to drill in the plate or whatever. I don't trust Hegseth to have the brains to know that the use of force is not what he wants. He may see it as this testosterone filled, let's go in and do these land incursions in Venezuela. I just don't see him as a level-headed strategist.
Yeah, and why would that be? Because he's inexperienced, does not have the requisite resume to be Secretary of War, Defense. Might it have something to do with that?
It's already provocative. They've got the USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group, dealing with it down in the Caribbean. So this whole thing it's stressful.
It's going to get worse, Kim. It's going to get worse. Well, maybe we need to just lighten it up for a bit.
Lighten up, Francis. Let's do it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's Friday. And you know what that means? It's Friday Fabulous Florida.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
Let's start with this first Florida story. We all know that we, at times, driving too fast because we're in a rush. We're trying to get somewhere before a store may close. But I've never gone 105 miles an hour because I was trying to beat the doors closing at a pizza place. A Florida woman has been arrested for driving 107 miles an hour trying to get to Little Caesars before it closed.
When you absolutely positively have to have it right now, Mo.
Well, you should have ordered 10 minutes earlier. Deputies say Yasmin Arazo, 21 years old, was tracked at 107 miles an hour in her Kia, which is an accomplishment all by itself, as she sped northbound on U.S. Highway 19 in Palm Harbor, and the speed limit is 55 miles an hour. The traffic stop was made, and while being arrested, Arazo told deputies she was speeding to get to Little Caesars before the store closed, as if telling that truth was going to, I don't know, make her not get arrested or make it sound any better or seem any better. I've driven fast in my life. Not for pizza.
In a Kia too. That's pretty fast for a Kia.
How fast do those little things go? Why?
Not much faster than that, I'm assuming.
Heather says, hey, we've all been hungry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not going to risk my life and freedom over Little Caesars pizza.
Oh, Wes says, and Wes is down in Florida, says we have a new law in Florida called a super speeder law. It's an automatic arrest. 107, I think that will qualify. I don't know.
No, we have that too in California. I think it's just considered reckless driving, where if you're like 30 or 40 miles above the speed limit, they have to arrest you. But yeah, look, and I'm not going to be a purist here. I've driven very fast. I had a Honda S2000 and I would open it up on the way out to Vegas, and I've driven up there, but it wasn't for Little Caesars pizza. Okay.
Well, you know what? Different things are important to different people, Mo. A lot of love for her mugshot. A 9 up, 9 says Mimi, a 6 says Karen, an 8 from Tammy. Yeah, she's a 10, says Delette.
I like the neck tats. The neck tats are nice.
Neck tats, yes.
Anytime there's a neck tat.
Oh, very sexy, man. Or not.
Let's hope that Little Caesars was worth the trouble.
Florida man has jumped from a moving vehicle after a child called 911 to report her parents fighting inside the car.
Oh, how
you heard that right.
Might have to be. Wow.
A Florida woman grabbed the wheel of a moving vehicle and brought it to a safe stop after deputies say her husband jumped from the vehicle as they tried to pull it over following a frantic call. Yes. They were trying to pull over the car, and the husband jumped out of the car while the child in the car called 911 saying her parents were arguing while in the car.
What's got going here is a situation.
I'd be willing to bet there's alcohol involved.
Oh, I'm not taking that bet because I would lose. According to the Washington County Sheriff's Office, a child called 911 and said she was traveling with her parents who were fighting while driving down the road. The child said they were on Highway 79 and was able to give a description of the vehicle before the call got disconnected. Deputies went to the area to find the vehicle, and when the deputy spotted the vehicle matching the description the child gave, the deputy activated lights and sirens and tried to pull the car over. And for some reason, the vehicle continued traveling northbound for a while, and then the driver opened the door and jumped out of the moving vehicle while police were in pursuit. Now,
oh man, look at him.
I don't know if that's from the fight or from the pavement.
It looks like road rash from the pavement. This guy, if you're listening on audio, he's got a bunch of bloody gashes all over his face. Looks horrible.
Yeah, I can't remember a mugshot that we ever showed actually with the guy having blood.
Yeah.
On his
Wouldn't it have been easier to just pull the car over and stop? It's just a rhetorical question, but I'm saying it probably would have been easier to just stop the car since you are driving. The police are behind you, as opposed to jumping from a moving car. How is that story supposed to end well for him on any level?
Sometimes you just need to get out, I guess.
Yeah, we're getting some good rankings on the scale. We got an 11, a couple 10s already, ranking our mugshot photo. But yeah, this is an insane story.
Yeah, I'll go 11. There were 3 minor children in that car when police got in there.
Could have ended much worse, much worse.
What a horrible experience for those kids. Awful childhood.
One more before we end this fabulous Friday, Florida. Florida man charged after 66 pounds of cocaine found in this Indiana traffic stop. So it didn't happen in Florida, but a Florida man is the one believed responsible for all this cocaine. 66 pounds. That's like a medium-sized child.
He's bringing the Florida with him wherever he goes, this guy. That's a lot of cocaine. Look at that.
Jordan Lanier, 25 years old, just effed off his life, has been charged with dealing cocaine and possession of marijuana. But here's the thing. You have 66 pounds of coke in your car and some marijuana, and you're speeding?
He looks like a happy JD Vance, doesn't he?
Oh, yes, he does. He does. Yeah. The eyeliner gives it away.
Wow.
During the stop,
he doesn't look like the kind of guy who'd have 66 pounds of coke in the back of the car.
He obviously was very confident that he could speed and still not worry about it. During the stop, a K9 performed an open air sniff and alerted to the presence of narcotics. Of course, 66 pounds will give it away. And when police searched the truck, they found a compartment allegedly containing 30 individual packages of kilos of cocaine. Police say the street value is between $600,000 and $800,000, and Lanier faces up to 30 years in prison if found guilty. He probably will be.
That's a lot of Little Caesars pizzas.
Come full circle. Yes, it is.
Yes, but he wasn't doing 107. He was only doing, I don't know, maybe 80 or something. And there you have your Friday fabulous Florida.
In the chat, just share what you think is your favorite. How about you, Kim? What do you think was your favorite this week?
I think I'm going for the pizza lady and her wild ride to beat the clock on the Little Caesars pizza. Yeah. What about you, Mo?
Oh, Little Caesars. All the way. 107.
It's a sweep. She's driving. Committed. Yeah, she's driving that hot and ready. She was hot and ready for the pizza.
What are you trying to say, Albert?
Hey, the booking photo, great booking photo also. Great booking photo.
Oh, it looks like it's a chat. Little Caesar says Penny, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Parlor
pizza. Yeah. Domino's. Pizza girl. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a sweep this week.
Yeah, I love pizza, but not that much.
No.
I love pizza, just not willing to go to jail for it.
Lots of pizza.
All right.
That's fun.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now here.
He comes and goes on a rainbow. It is Friday. He's my new best friend. He's Michael Snyder. And he has a slew of movies to review. And let me say, Michael Snyder, good afternoon. And I did get to see Predator Badlands. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm halfway through Frankenstein on Netflix, really enjoying that. So I think we're kindred spirits. What you see is what I see.
I tend to agree, Mo. But before we get into any of that, I want to publicly reveal that we are changing the name of my review segment from Michael Snyder's Culture Blast to the Department of Unquestionably Correct Opinions. And to that end, we're putting up a new bronze plaque in the studio. As soon as we can find the right screws and a Phillips screwdriver, I think it's going to be a done deal. And by the way, I think it's time to find out the truth of Mark's absence from the show these past 2 weeks. So I have instructed Engineer General Tony Sorrentino to begin an investigation into whether Mark was in Colombia for a wedding or actually at Mar-a-Lago for Donald Trump's annual Festival of Fast Food. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
You know, Mark is not going to appreciate you positing that he might have been at Mar-a-Lago. You know that, right?
Hey, it's just an investigation, Mo. I'm not saying one thing or the other. You know what? All kidding aside, before we get to the movies and TV shows, like so many of us connected to the Mark Thompson show, I was saddened to receive word that the Protean investigative reporter Jim Avila had passed away. It was an honor and a little intimidating to follow his always articulate and thoughtful segments with and without Michael Shure on Fridays. And as I noted on social media, I had the good fortune to meet Jim in person. And what you got on the air is what you got one-on-one. He was a smart, honest, humble, kind person. He was one of the good guys, and we're going to miss him and his insights, and we'll continue to miss him for the foreseeable future.
Well said, my friend. Well said.
All right. After last weekend's surprisingly large selection of worthwhile new movie offerings, and I remarked on it at the time, we're back to some mediocrity on the cinema scene. Shall we get down to it, sir?
Look, I assumed you were going in that direction. Thank you for confirming that. Please proceed.
Well, whether it's due to the rise in prevalence of envelope-pushing reality TV programming since the 1982 Stephen King sci-fi novel, and the 1987 movie it spawned were released, or whether it's the American dystopia that seems to now be a governmental whim away, the remake of The Running Man that hits theaters this weekend struck me as a little tired or played out. I mean, even the devilishly clever filmmaker Edgar Wright, this is the guy who did Last Night in Soho, Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I love this guy's work. Even though this is the guy who directed and co-scripted this update, he can't stop the kind of creative inertia that belies what is often a frantic pace, nor can the hero, being played by square-jawed leading man du jour Glenn Powell, who has a flair for comedy, elevate this in the part that Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of devoured on the big screen in 1987. The basics are the same. A desperate man who needs money in a haves, have-nots society of the near future risks his life in a widely broadcasted, high-rated, winner-takes-all TV competition show where you need to survive assassins for 30 days to win the massive cash prize, or you die. Anyway, I like this a lot more when it was called The Long Walk. And, interestingly, another Stephen King adaptation. I know The Long Walk was a bit different insofar as it wasn't a kind of a grandiose, guns blazing action movie like this. But after the original Running Man and the similarly themed Battle Royale and the Hunger Games, Wright's take didn't give me something new. And for all its attempts to be satirical, funny like the original movie, it's surprisingly short on laughs, especially when you consider how funny Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim were. So it's kind of promising at first. It's entertaining in sporadic bursts, and ultimately it coasts on the every guy charisma of Powell and the skill of the supporting players led by Josh Brolin as the producer of the Running Man show, Coleman Domingo in the Richard Dawson MC role, that was the case in the first movie, Lee Pace as a villain, Katie O'Brien. William H. Macy is woefully underused, and Michael Shure is just plain annoying in the role he plays here. To be honest, I did kind of enjoy Saturday Night Live cast member Ben Marshall, a new addition to the cast at SNL, as a kind of a hapless and clueless contestant on The Running Man. But that was kind of early on in the movie. Maybe the major culprit, other than that sense of been there, seen that, was the script, which seemed to me sloppy and dashed off. But whatever. This Running Man is too late to the finish line. Let's just say I wouldn't run to see The Running Man. All right, wait. My final words on The Running Man 2025. The classic Snyder shrug, not terrible. The Running Man is in theaters. I mean, are you disappointed?
I think you're...
Let me put it this way. I never thought that Glenn Powell was truly a leading man. He doesn't fill up the screen in the way that Arnold Schwarzenegger does. I don't know if he is a bona fide star in his own right. I think he's likable, but I don't think he is a superstar who can hold a movie by himself. He needs that ensemble cast. And I don't know if you should ever remake classics or cult classics. The Running Man would be the latter. And I've yet to see a remake of a cult classic do well. So your review resonates with me greatly.
And I got to say, with things like Survivor and worse, on television, it seems to undercut what was kind of startling about the original and about Stephen King's book. Don't you think? I mean,
oh, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head when we've been kind of anesthetized or numb to the idea of this dystopian world because we're living through it.
Right.
So a movie about it is not going to be all that awe-inspiring.
True. Well, let's move on. And we actually have a continuation of a franchise here. The third installment in the Now You See Me heist movie franchise is, as one would hope, disposable fun. These movies, which started up in 2013 with what is still the best of them, Now You See Me, are amusing thrill rides of varying quality, and usually they're a diverting watch. And the premise is kind of durable. A band of wily magicians known as the Four Horsemen rip off bad guys and try to out-magic one another. So Now You See Me, Now You Don't is the first since the 2016 sequel, but we get the familiar star-studded ensemble to hopefully dazzle us. This time, the story features the characters played by Jesse Eisenberg. He's kind of a stick in the mud. Woody Harrelson, a kind of hilarious hypnotist. Isla Fisher, a bit of an escape artist. Dave Franco, a sleight of hand guy. And as the fifth horseman or horsewoman, Lizzie Kaplan. And they're reluctantly reuniting after 10 years apart to take on an easy-to-hate villain, a corrupt, super wealthy diamond broker played by Rosamund Pike. So the familiar cast is bolstered by some rising talent, Justice Smith, Dominic Sessa, and Ariana Greenblatt, as a new generation of world-class prestidigitators. Plus, there are one or two unexpected returning faces who shall remain nameless to avoid spoiling any surprises. Yes, it is convoluted and implausible and silly, but that's kind of what you sign up for when you see one of these movies. Now You See Me, Now You Don't is directed by Ruben Fleischer. He does this duty for the first time. And he manages to keep all of the on-screen misdirection happening in lively fashion. Like a magic trick, Now You See Me, Now You Don't gets your attention, then seems to disappear as soon as you finish watching it. But I found it more enjoyable than the Running Man remake. Now You See Me, Now You Don't is in theaters. Had you seen the earlier films, Mo?
Yes, I just rewatched the first two last week in preparation for this. I really like this this movie series, and you said there are going to be some cameos or appearances of other actors. I was going to ask you, since you didn't mention his name, so if you don't want to answer, that's fine. I know that Mark Ruffalo was in the first two. I know that Morgan Freeman was in the first two, but you conspicuously omitted both of them in your review. That gives me cause for concern.
Mo, I cannot really say with any certainty that either of these people is in this movie, nor are there penguins involved. Anyway. So let's move on. He's played numerous loonies and weirdos and lost souls with passion, humor, and a flair. But does the wild and bold Nicolas Cage have a messiah complex? Maybe, but in the bizarre and uneasy mix of New Testament lore and horror, The Carpenter's Son, Cage actually plays the Messiah's stepfather, Joseph. So after that Bethlehem manger situation, Cage's Joseph wanders the desert with wife Mary, played amazingly by UK pop singer FKA Twigs. And amazingly, not like what a performance, but wow, FKA Twigs is playing Mary. And son Jesus is there. They are outcasts despite or because of the boy's heavenly lineage. in short order, Joseph, and we'll call him Teenage Jesus, played by the talented young British actor Noah Jupe, are beset by demonic figures, the spawn of Satan or the devil himself, tempting them to forego their fealty to God. So add the push-pull between Joseph and Jesus, and you've got daddy issues galore. I know it sounds like it might be a glorious train wreck, like some of Cage's craziest films, but no such luck. It's all shot in the murkiest of cinematography on location in Greece, which has never looked less sunny, by the way. And the dialogue is rife with overwrought biblical pronouncements, which are kind of fitfully entertaining when shouted by Cage at some horned creature that's attempting to drag him and Jesus to hell. You know, as horror movies go, The Carpenter's Son is a tedious one. It's written and directed by Lofty Nathan, whose name is unfamiliar to me. You know, I would have preferred John Carpenter's Son, or maybe the Gospel according to Sam Raimi. The overall vibe is more like the Necronomicon, you know, the fictional Book of the Dead in Raimi's Evil Dead franchise, than the Bible. And that said, it is nowhere near as exciting, goofy, and genuinely scary as seeing Bruce Campbell going bonkers with a chainsaw in those Raimi films. As for seeing teenage Jesus deal with his tormentors, I couldn't help but be reminded of Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, singer and poet Lydia Lunch's New York-based art punk band from the 80s, whose churning, chaotic music might have broken up the dolorous nature of The Carpenter's Son, which is in select theaters if you choose to select them.
That hurts my heart because I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan, and it's been decades since he's had a decent movie.
Oh, no. Mo, if you haven't seen Pig, you're really missing out.
No. I saw Pig, and I couldn't finish Pig, how bad it was.
Oh, my God, I love Pig. Anyway, different strokes. I know we follow different sports teams. You know, we'll agree to disagree. Anyway, let's move on. You've heard of or seen the Muppet Babies in the crime business as usual Feds versus Cartels movie Trap House. You can meet the DEA teens. At least that's what transpires when Cole, the son of Dave Bautista's tough but loving single father government agent character Ray Seal, decides to organize his fellow offspring of the El Paso, Texas DEA team to rip off a cartel trap house where the drug smugglers' ill-gotten loot is left for pickup. So Cole has charitable intentions. He wants to use the cash to help out unfortunate victims of the border drug war, but that puts him and the other teens in the crosshairs of the cartel and Ray's DEA unit. This whole thing is a bit of a stretch, as is the presence of the great film, TV, and stage actor Bobby Cannavale, most recently in Blue Moon and the last season of Only Murders in the Building. Here he plays Bautista's best buddy in the DEA. I guess, Bobby got to eat. The job comes along and you take it. The kid actors are all right, starting with Jack Champion as Cole, but you also get Sophia Lillis, Inda Navarrete, and Blue Del Barrio, who have all done interesting work on TV and in film. It's directed by someone named Michael Dowse, produced of all people by Ridley Scott, among others, including Bautista.
What?
This is so incredibly, it's gone as soon as you watch it. I mean, I think that now you see it, now you see me, now you don't linger a little more than this. I will say this. I didn't hate Trap House, but again, that's just a cut below, not terrible. Anyway, Trap House is in select theaters. Let's see if we can get to something a little more worthwhile. And yes, Sirat. Sirat depicts a stunning, wrenching odyssey through the wasteland of southern Morocco by a father named Luis and his son Esteban as they search for Esteban's sister, who has been missing since she attended a rave in North Africa a number of months back. As such, since they're there, Luis and Esteban hook up with a bunch of ravers who are on their way to yet another big desert dance party. And it's kind of interesting. Real ravers play the road trippers that Luis and Esteban follow on their way to the next festival. But it's happening as the world descends into chaos around them. They get the occasional news report that kind of global war is breaking out. So the sense of madness and dislocation that the movie conjures is totally enhanced by a blasting soundtrack of frenzied techno music, or if you prefer EDM, that kind of shakes the desert sands. Surratt is kind of relentless and occasionally explosive, and I felt myself kind of inadvertently leap in my seat a couple times. It is directed and co-written by Oliver Lax, and won the jury prize at the 2025 Cannes Film Festival, and also is Spain's official submission for Best International Feature Film at the upcoming 98th Academy Awards. Surratt is brutal and powerful. It's going to rattle a few people, but I do think it's a pretty great film. It is in select theaters. And, let's wrap things up with something for the whole family, because I kind of like to do that. Arco is the latest wondrous French animated feature in a string of beautiful projects that includes, from France, that includes the sci-fi noir Mars Express, the biographical Little Amelie, which I talked about last week, and the TV shows Arcane and Scavenger's Reign. The French animation industry is on a serious roll. Like Little Amelie, Arco, which was directed and co-written by Hugo Bienvenu, is made in a design style that evokes the anime glory of venerated Japanese filmmaker Hayao Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli, the people that brought you wonderful movies in the past, just things that people adore, like My Neighbor Totoro. And, I won't even get into a list of them, but Miyazaki is a master. But Arco has a very singular tone and a fantastical story to tell about a boy named Arco who comes from a distant future and arrives in the year 2075, is stuck there, and with the help of a girl named Iris that he meets there, and then tries to somehow return to his time and family. The movie is enhanced by a beautiful color palette, which is reinforced by the conceit that Arco comes and goes through time on a rainbow. I was thinking of suing the filmmakers for that rainbow appropriation, but I was so charmed by the visual confection that is Arco that I'll let it slide. Arco is in select theaters. It's going to be a good thing to watch over the holidays. And if it gets to video in time, the whole family can gather around and enjoy it. Arco.
Michael, let's quickly review. You said The Running Man was too late to the finish line. I am always going to be partial to the original. I'm not a fan of remaking classics or cult classics. The Running Man, Richard Dawson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, cult classic. Love that version and iteration. But I'll watch Glenn Powell's. I won't have as high of expectations. Now You See Me, Now You Don't. The third in that trilogy. I love the Now You See Me franchise. I hope I will love the third one as well. But you said huge cast, but it seems to disappear along the way. So I will see if my expectations meet your reality.
No, let me amend that. No, it disappears after you've watched it. It's very much of the moment. It's very enjoyable while you watch it. Don't misconstrue.
So it's disposable. You won't waste your time, but you won't think much about it afterward.
Yeah, I thought much in the same manner that a movie like The Running Man remake is disposable. So is this, but I found this to be more enjoyable to watch and more fresh and entertaining, even though, again, we've been here 2 other times.
You didn't have a lot positive to say about The Carpenter's Son, starring Nicolas Cage, among others. I would dub Nicolas Cage now as the king of the B movie. You said The Carpenter's Son had bad photography. It was a drab and at times tedious.
Yeah, it's the muddiest of visual presentations, and I just it was silly, but not in a enjoyable way.
Trap House, starring among other people, what's his name? Dave Bautista. He's paired with Children of the DEA. It's a heist film. A huge stretch, is completely forgettable. You said it's available in select theaters. It sounds like it should have gone straight to video.
Yeah, it was fun to watch, sort of, but not as much fun as Now You See Me.
Surratt, big desert dance party as the world implodes, that just gets me right there. I'm curious because I like world-ending movies. You said it had a blasting soundtrack, but it's worth a watch ultimately, and I think I'm going to make time for it.
Yes, but I want to keep you aware of the fact that all of what's going on in the rest of the world is removed. It's not on screen. We only have hints of it. What we do have is this brutal odyssey through the desert, and it was very powerful for me.
Sounds good. And you closed out with Arco, the French animated feature, singular in tone, talking about this young boy stuck in time, with the exception of when he's moving through time, flying on a rainbow, very reminiscent of one Michael Snyder I happen to know.
Yeah, as we wrap up, I do want to throw out one TV recommendation, and if you haven't seen this yet, Mr. Mo Kelly, you have to. Pluribus, currently running on Apple TV, is one of the coolest and most unique science fiction projects in memory. It comes from the mind of writer, creator, and showrunner Vince Gilligan, who first came to prominence as a writer and director on The X-Files, went on to create and write Breaking Bad and its spin-off series Better Call Saul. Pluribus feels like this leap forward into another realm for Gilligan. On what seems like a random day in the near future, the people of the world are suddenly united in an unexpected and morally ambiguous way, except for a very few folks. And one of the unaffected is Carol, an author of romance novels, who was then forced to confront the consequences of this massive global change. Carol is played by Rhea Seehorn, who was a lawyer and Saul's love interest on Better Call Saul. She is amazing in the demanding role of Carol. It's 3 episodes into a 9-episode run that is already assured a second season, and I have no idea where Pluribus is headed, but I am definitely along for the ride. Again, it's on Apple TV.
Would I be wrong to say that Apple TV, pound for pound, has the best television programming, the best series?
What?
It has come to that point, I think. I mean, I can't get into depth on it, but Down Cemetery Road, which is based on a Mick Herron novel, the guy who created Slow Horses,
Shrinking.
that's running now. It's streaming now. Oh my God, it's so good. Obviously, Ted Lasso. There are so many wonderful shows that are now available on Apple TV. I would tend to agree. Speaking of wonderful shows, just one more quick note as we head out. I'm in Los Angeles. It's kind of rainy, but tonight I'm going to try to go to Mark Mothersbaugh's Mutt Muzz Gallery. Mark Mothersbaugh, one of the leading lights in Devo. He has a very cool gallery in Chinatown. And opening tonight is a show called Beautiful Mutants. And my friend Todd Westover has a painting in the show, as do a couple other people I know. If you're interested in reading me, I'm at thevoicesf.org. And yes, sir, I am a proud contributor to the Mark Thompson Show and should be back here next Friday with Mark Thompson.
And you left out the best part, how you come and go on a rainbow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Mo, it's been a pleasure, and see you soon.
Talk soon, Michael Snyder. Look, they call this work, but it's really not work. I get to talk to all these wonderful individuals, have these wonderful conversations about politics, movies, social issues, all these things in between. And that's why it's great to be not only hosting the Mark Thompson Show, but further part of the Mark Thompson Show each and every Friday. I have to say thank you to Kim McAllister, who has held my hand and wound me up like a toy and sent me out there to do the best I could, filling the shoes of Mark Thompson, who, fingers crossed, will be back on Monday from Colombia.
If he makes the plane, right? Woohoo!
Look, that's the ongoing impact of the shutdown. We are not back to normal as of yet. So safe travels to Mark. I've been seeing some of the pictures that he's been having way more fun than we have here in the United States. I will say that.
Which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Eric Lasardo with 20 says, it's been great having you host Mark's show, Mo. Hope you find another permanent home soon.
Thank you, Eric.
I know that people are hoping you come back more often than Friday. Susan Roberts with 10. Mo, looking forward to having you come back. Here's a little something toward a Mark Thompson Show mug. See?
Oh, thank you.
Go right to getmarkmerch.com and you've got some cash to spend it. Vilma says, love you, Mo. Don't always agree with you, but I love that. Please come back soon if this is the last day for the week. Indeed, it is. And thank you, Vilma, for the comment and the contribution. Much appreciated. Kathy says, why not mention Jim A's passing to Michael S? I think we had talked about it and we were remiss in not mentioning it to Michael Snyder, but I'm glad that Michael Shure, but Michael Snyder did mention it. Yeah. And then Cindy with a 5. Thank you for a great week, Mo.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks everyone for the contributions. And yeah, Delette says, thank you, Mo. We've enjoyed you very much while Mark is gone and glad to hear you'll be joining us on Fridays.
Absolutely.
Love it. Loved having you, Mo. You're excellent.
Thank you, Albert, as well, for all the help that you gave us behind the scenes. Thank you, Tony Sorrentino, for your help during the week. And thank you for watching. You could have spent your time anywhere with anyone, but you spent it with us here on the Mark Thompson Show. And coming up on Monday, hopefully Mark will be back, but Gary Dietrich will be in to talk politics as well. And I'll be watching and I'll be listening.
For the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.